Hello and good evening, everyone. This is Vexing Cat, and I will be reading today from the amazing author Edgar Allan Poe. I have gone ahead and posted a picture here for everyone to see. This is the charming Edgar Allan Poe. He was born in 1809 and subsequently died 40 years later in 1849. So this is the beginning of my Spooktober Masterpiece Series. This is episode 0, so forgive me if there's still some hiccups. I'm still working out the kinks, but I thought I'd start easing into Spooktober with a couple of shorter works by Edgar Allan Poe as opposed to my later works, which will be over multiple sessions as Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, H.P. Lovecraft, and a couple of others are longer bodies of work than Edgar Allan Poe. So I'm Vexing Cat, voice actor, improv. I do audio work, I do some artwork, and I'm just starting to roll into this streaming theme thing. I am really excited to be here and talk about some of my favorite work, and that is poetry in particular. And during the month of October, I do enjoy the scarier, darker, creepier things that crawl in the night. And so that's why I wanted to start with Edgar Allan Poe, because he actually has a not extensive body of work, but during the time that he was an active writer, he influenced both American and international literature. He is known to be one of the originators of the true short story. He's like redefined what a short story was. One of the originators for both horror and detective fiction, and some have to say that like his poetry was so unique, his short stories were so unique, that like he really established a foothold on the literary scene during the 1800s. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite poems, and it is called The Raven. I have a copy of The Raven from the Library of Congress. And this body of work, while incredibly beautiful, unfortunately, the font choice during publishing is quite minute, which I'll show an example of, which is right here. I love the feel of this book. I love the texture of the weathering paper. I love the idea of that faded ink. However, this particular example is very minute use of the page. So I just really wanted to show this off. I do not get to see the cover. It is fabric bound, but here in the opening crease of the book, you can see the book is from the Library of Congress. It has this amazing ripple pattern printed paper on the inside, and then it has these beautiful ink graphics of here's a raven, and then through the course of the book I have those pictures up as well. I will show them in due time, but I would like to read each of these stanzas, and then we can discuss, if anyone's listening, we can discuss those various forms and like his style of poetry and written prose. So I just want to give a shout out to Weary Pines, who provided the music from Upbeat, and that's a free site for open license music for people to use for streaming. I'll go ahead and post the information about that here in my chat for anyone that is interested. I also have it in my outro as well, different song, and you'll hear that later. So let me start with there we go. So this is titled The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of some one gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, I distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and every separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore. For the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken and sad uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now to still the beating of my heart I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. It is, and nothing more." I'm going to tab back over here. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more." So I will show that first beautiful picture here. So it's him sitting at his desk in the dark of his chambers, nearly napping. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and the echo murmured back the word, "Lenore?" Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhere louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what threat it is, or what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obseance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but within the mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Here he is coming through the window, and I just love how he looks. And then the picture of him on the bust of Pallas. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim, an ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvel this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot keep agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour, nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled, as at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, an ominous bird of yore, meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated over, but whose velvet violet lining, with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall pass, ah, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evils, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore, quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by the heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door, quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on that pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight over him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out the shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. His shadow on the floor is one of the last paintings in the first book, and the last of which is Libris, this beautiful drawing of a raven flying. So Edgar Allan Poe had a lot of prose and a lot of context. speaking on his dearly departed Lenore. This was before, I believe, he married his wife in 1835. That was his wife, Virginia. This was during his time when he was at West Point that he wrote this. He was serving in the army, I believe, and going through training. And instead of going to drills and classes and everything he should have been doing, he was holed up in his room writing an extensive body of work that he later took with him to New York, and that's what netted him that experience. And he won a contest of poetry in Baltimore, and that money went towards funding his ongoing exploration of being a writer and editor. He was also just a noted poet. He was also a literary critic, so for a while he was critiquing other people's work, but he really made a splash on the literary scene with that full body of work. Basically, his adoptive dad, Mr. Allan, actually paid his commission to get him out of the military, and that allowed him the ability to travel. But basically, over the next 10 years after he married his wife, Virginia, he established himself within the literary scene and really made himself well known for his body of work, including The Raven, The Telltale Heart, which I'll be reading in a minute, and just really pushing the envelope for horror and macabre storytelling. Now, unfortunately, the time between when his marriage to his wife in 1835 and her subsequent death was only 12 years. She died of tuberculosis, and his lifetime struggle of, that morose poet personality led him to do a lot of drinking and depression, and he struggled, and it continued to get worse. But the 2 years after she died is when he experienced the worst of it, and it just got progressively worse and worse and worse. And then in October of 1849, he was on his way back to Baltimore, and he didn't make it to his destination. He was in a hotel room, and he'd actually passed out. They don't know exactly what caused him to die. In fact, it was, quote, acute congestion of the brain, unquote. There's a lot of speculation by modern medical practitioners on what the ailment exactly was that caused him to die. It could have been a brain lesion, or they think it might have even been rabies. He could have been dying from rabies and nobody had any idea. Now, I am going to read another piece of his work, and it's much shorter, and it's more of a story rather than a poem, called The Telltale Heart. Now, bear with me just a second. That is in this one. This one's not quite as pretty as the previous style from the Library of Congress, but this came from his body of work, and it has some cool artwork drawn into it. But this one is called The Telltale Heart, which is one of his short stories that he's well known for. It's true, yes, I have been ill, very ill, but why do you say that I have lost control of my mind? Why do you say that I am mad? Can you not see that I have full control of my mind? Is it not clear that I am not mad? Indeed, the illness only made my mind, my feelings, my senses stronger, more powerful. My sense of hearing especially became more powerful. I could hear sounds I had never heard before. I heard sounds from heaven, and I heard sounds from hell. Listen. Listen, and I will tell you how it happened. You will see, you will hear how healthy my mind is. It is impossible to say how the idea first entered my head. There was no reason for what I did. I did not hate the old man. I even loved him. he had never hurt me. I did not want his money. I think it was his eye. His eye was like the eye of a vulture, the eye of one whose terrible birds that watch and wait while an animal dies, and then fall upon the dead body and pull it to pieces to eat it. When the old man looked at me with his vulture eye, a cold feeling went up and down my back. Even my blood became cold, and so I finally decided I had to kill the old man and close that eye forever. So you think I am mad. A madman cannot plan, but you should have seen me during all of that week. I was as friendly to the old man as I could be, and warm and loving. Every night about 12 o'clock I slowly opened his door. And when the door was opened wide enough, I put my hand in, and then my head. In my hand I held a light covered over with a cloth so that no light showed, and I stood there quietly. Then carefully I lifted the cloth just a little, so that a single, thin, small light fell across that eye. For 7 nights I did this. 7 long nights. Every night at midnight. Always the eye was closed, so it was impossible for me to do the work. For it was not the old man I felt I had to kill. It was the eye, his evil eye. And every morning I went to his room, and with a warm, friendly voice I asked him how he had slept. He could not guess that every night, just at 12, I looked in at him as he slept. The 8th night I was more than usually careful as I opened the door. The hands of the clock moved more quickly than did my hand. Never before had I felt so strongly my own power. I was now sure of success. The old man was lying there, not dreaming that I was at his door. Suddenly he moved in his bed. You may think I became afraid, but no. The darkness in his room was thick and black. I knew he could not see the opening of the door. I continued to push the door slowly, softly. I put in my head, I put in my hand with the covered light. Suddenly the old man sat straight up in bed and cried, "Who's there?" I stood quite still. For a whole hour I did not move, nor did I hear him again lie down in his bed. He just sat there, listening. Then I heard a sound, a low cry of fear, which escaped from the old man. Now I knew that he was sitting up in his bed, filled with fear. I knew that he knew that I was there. He did not see me there. He could not see me there. He felt me there. Now he knew that death was standing there. Slowly, little by little, I lifted the cloth until a small, small light escaped from under it to fall upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide, wide open, and my anger increased as it looked straight at me. I could not see the old man's face, only that eye, that hard blue eye, and the blood in my body became like ice. Have I not told you that my hearing had become unusually strong? Now I could hear a quick, low, soft sound like the sound of a clock heard through a wall. It was the beating of an old man's heart. I tried to stand quietly, but the sound grew louder. The old man's fear must have been great indeed, and as the sound grew louder, my anger became greater and more painful. But it was more than anger. In the quiet night, in the dark silence of the bedroom, my anger became fear, for the heart was beating so loudly that I was sure someone must hear. The time had come. I rushed into the room, crying, "Die! Die!" The old man gave a loud cry of fear as I fell upon him and held the bed covers tightly over his head. Still his heart was beating, but I smiled as I felt that success was near. For many minutes that heart continued to beat, but at last the beating stopped. The old man was dead. I took away the bed covers and held my heart over my ear over his heart. There was no sound. Yes, he was dead, dead as a stone. His eye would trouble me no more. So I am mad, you say. You should have seen how careful I was to put the body where no one could find it. First I cut off the head, then the arms and the legs. I was more careful not to let a single drop of blood fall on the floor. I pulled up 3 of the boards that formed the floor and put the pieces of the body there. Then I put the boards down again, carefully, so carefully that no human eye could see that they had been moved. As I finished the work, I heard that someone was at the door. It was now 4 o'clock in the morning, but still dark. I had no fear, however. As I went down to open the door, 3 men were at the door, 3 officers of the police. One of the neighbors had heard the old man's cry and had called the police. These 3 had come to ask questions and search the house. I asked the policeman to come in. The cry, I said, was my own, in a dream. The old man, I said, was away. He had gone to visit a friend in the country. I took them through the whole house, telling them to search it all, to search well. I led them finally into the old man's bedroom. As if playing a game with them, I asked them to sit down and talk for a while. My easy, quiet manner made the policemen believe my story, so they sat talking with me in a friendly way. But although I answered them in the same way, I soon wished that they would go. My head hurt, and there was a strange sound in my ears. I talked more and faster. The sound became clearer, and still they sat and talked. Suddenly, I knew the sound was not in my ears. It was just inside my head. At that moment, I must have become quite white. I talked still faster and louder, and the sound, too, became louder. It was quick, soft, a quick, low, soft sound, like the sound of a clock heard through a wall. A sound I knew well. Louder it became, and louder. Why did the men not go? Louder! Louder! I stood up and walked quickly around the room. I pushed my chair across the floor to make more noise, to cover that terrible sound. I talked even louder, and still the men sat and talked and smiled. Was it possible that they could not hear? No, they heard. I was certain of it. They knew. Now it was they who were playing a game with me. I was suffering more than I could bear from their smiles and from that sound, louder, louder, louder. Suddenly, I could bear it no longer. I pointed at the boards and cried, "Yes, yes, I killed him. Pull up the boards and you shall see. I killed him, but why does his heart not stop beating? Why does it not stop?" Obviously, Edgar Allan Poe, from beginning to end in this short story, builds this crescendo of a slowly beating heart that grows louder and louder, and it's his own heartbeat in his own ears that he's hearing, and the course of which is becoming unbearable, the sound of it to him, because he thinks it's the heart that's under the floorboards, and he gives himself away because of his own psychosis. But to lay in wait in the darkness, watching an old man sleep every night for 7 continuous nights because of the way the man looked at him. He was very clearly not well. And I think Edgar Allan Poe did a really good job of illustrating how, in that story, he was very much not well. So, Edgar Allan Poe, amazing writer, unique storyteller. He did a lot of work. He was involved in a ton of short stories and poems, of selected poems by Edgar Allan Poe. But I just want to kind of read the room, see who all's here, if anybody has any questions. So he has a few other poems. This is another beautiful book that I was reading from earlier. Beautiful rendering, lithography. So this is an interesting piece of work. This is done through a printing process where they etch a piece of copper. And so then through that acid etching, it leaves the relief of the images. So you use a dark ink, or modern day artists will use a Sharpie to draw their artwork. And then wherever there is no ink, it would actually allow you to etch into the metal, leave behind the relief that you can print over. This one, of course, was done, I believe, is posted, and this one came well after his death. This was published in 1914. But there's a couple of other well-known works. The Bells, I'll read The Bells, and then Annabell Lee is one of my other favorites. The Bells being appropriate, but perhaps Annabell Lee, I think, is a little bit more fun. Let's get over to, for Annie, The Bells. Here we go. So this next work is more brighter, shinier, more delightful. It was titled The Bells, and it gets a little redundant, but it's a really great story, or great poem, I should say. And then as we're going into more wintry months and coming up into our holiday season, I thought this would be another appropriate body of work to read. The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells! What a world of merriment their melody foretells! How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night! While the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with the crystalline delight, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme, to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight. From the molten golden tones, and all in tune, what a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells, how it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarum bells, brazen bells, what a tale of terror now their turbulency tells, and the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright, too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek, shriek, out of tune, in the clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with a desperate desire and a resolute endeavor, now to sit or never, by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, 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 what a tale their terror tells of despair, how they clang and clash and roar, what a horror they outpour on the bosom of palpitating air, yet the ear it fully knows by the twanging and the clanging how the danger ebbs and flows, yet the ear distinctly tells in the jangling and the wrangling how the danger sinks and swells by the sinking of the or the swelling in the anger of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 in the clamor and the clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells, what a world of solemn thought their monody compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy menace of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan, and the people, ah, the people, they that dwell upon up in the steeple all alone, and who tolling, tolling in the muffled monotone, feel a glory is so rolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls, and their king it is who tolls, and he rolls, 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 rolls. Rolls. A paean from the bells, with his merry bosom swells with the paean of the bells, and he dances and he yells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme, to the paean of the bells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme, to the throbbing of the bells, 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 to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, 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 as he knells, 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 in the happy runic rhyme, to the rolling of the bells, 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 to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the moaning and the groaning of the bells. Now, as you can see, lot of rhyme scheme in that poem. It starts out light, it starts out silver bells, beautiful, light, sweet, the fragrant air. It goes to wedding bells, which are golden and charming and really, are bright and lovely. Then it becomes alarm bells, brass bells, bells that are ringing and shrieking in the night, telling people of fire or of emergency. And from that, it goes to iron bells. And now iron bells are like the bells that would be in the churchyard in the dark of night when the ghouls and the dark and the evil things are creeping about. So it's interesting how he goes from very like a high note to this very dark place within just the imaging of bells. And then last but not least, I will read Annabell Lee. The rhyming scheme from this one is pretty unique. I've always really enjoyed this poem by Edgar Allan Poe, and it goes like this. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabell Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabell Lee, with a love that winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea a wind blew out of a cold chilling my beautiful Annabell Lee, so that her kingdom, her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabell Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we, and neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabell Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabell Lee, and the stars never rise but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabell Lee. And so, all in the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. I don't know if it's evident yet. It should be. But he was a very dark, morose, macabre, sad man. And the things he wrote about were also all of those things. He would take beautiful, bright things and twist them down into the very like core of the dark, hidden things that most people don't talk about. And I think his ability to go into those dark places, those that ability to like see the evil, see the dark, the twisted thoughts in these characters that he wrote about, created an outlet for his own internalized like anger and sadness and depression. So it's just kind of interesting to see that juxtaposition from like this beautiful day by the seaside. We were children. I loved her. She loved me. Into I'm going to lay down by her dead body in her tomb by the sounding of the sea. It's just kind of this wild ride that I don't know how we get there. Yep, I agree, Pallas. He definitely comes across that he dealt with a lot. He used that to compose interesting stories and poems. I agree. For while he was writing, he wrote some incredible bodies of work, but he just was so dark and so sad, which is interesting because I think like he kind of paved the way for other writers to get that dark. I mean, granted, this is like the 1840s, so this is like I don't even know how much time before we're talking some of the other authors, like Bram Stoker's Dracula is in that same era in the 1800s. I believe Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is also from this era. But these are all very short, kind of episode 0. I wanted it to be an opportunity for people to kind of get a feel for my reading style. And I'm going to post, on Twitch. I'm going to post on TikTok. I'm going to post on clips from these poems. You know, I'll probably post this in a day or two onto YouTube. And I just really want to like share my love of literary word and my love of the spooky and the macabre and the scary as well with other people. So tell your friends, tell your wives, whatever. Tell people, share my Twitch. And like I said, I'll be posting those content through the month of October. I will probably be doing anywhere between 2 to 3 days a week. I'm going to definitely be doing Sundays for sure, but it'll probably be like Wednesdays and Fridays and Sundays most likely. But yeah, check it out. Late night scary stories through October. And going into November, I'm probably going to read other literary classics, maybe Anne of Green Gables, Little Women, other things that kind of dabble into the holidays, and then through the Christmas, the month of December, I'll probably do more cheerful, happy stories, and then we'll just kind of see what lines up in the future and see how this goes. So I just wanted to kind of wrap up. Like I said, this is a short one today. We also had D&D today earlier. That's already up on my Twitch channel if you want to check that out. But today was session 11, and we'll be doing a recap with the character Isabella and my character Grace tomorrow, and you'll be on the lookout for that post. So have a great night, everyone. I really appreciate those of you that stopped by to listen, and I will be checking out here in just a second. There's a beautiful outro here in just a moment. This is also by the same creator, Weary Pines, open source creator. I'll post a link to that here in my chat as well. Did anybody have any questions about our dear Edgar Allan Poe before I go? Not at this time. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you all, and next time you're vexed. Excellent. I look forward to it. Here we go.